are looking at this fascinating story in the life of Samson. So he's the last of the judges that's mentioned in the book of Judges. And as we saw last time, he's a very interesting study in contrast. He had the power to subdue the Philistines, but he didn't have the power to subdue his own flesh. He was a judge that showed great strength physically, yet he showed great weakness spiritually. And we'll see more of these things as we continue on in the sad, sordid saga of Samson here tonight. So chapter 15, verse 1, we got a lot that we're going to cover tonight, so we're jumping right into it. Verse 1, hopefully you're all there with me. It says there, after a while, in the time of wheat harvest, it happened that Samson visited his wife with a young goat, and he said, "Let me go into my wife into her room." But her father would not permit him to go in. Her father said, "I really thought that you thoroughly hated her, therefore I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead." Verse 3, and Samson said to them, "This time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them." So remember, this chapter just runs right out of what we saw happening at the end of chapter 14. And in the last chapter, we saw that Samson chose a woman among the Philistines to marry. And that was all based really on him serving his own pleasures, as Samson is very well known to do. She appealed to his flesh. Remember in Judges 14, verse 3, it says at the end there, he says to his father, "Get her for me, for she pleases me well." And what that meant was that he's saying, she's right in my eyes. She's pleasing to the eyes. And so he gets his bride from the Philistines. But then at the wedding feast, remember Samson at the end of chapter 14 poses this riddle. His new bride, under threats of the Philistines, badgers Samson for the answer. And when she finally gets it, she shares with the Philistines, which then angers Samson when they give the answer. He's upset about that. He doesn't like how this all went down. And when he fulfilled the end of his deal, which is to go and gather some garments, which he went and killed 30 Philistines to get their garments and bring it back and to uphold his end of the deal, Samson goes back then to his father's house, leaving his wife now by herself. That's what happened. And thinking Samson is altogether done with her, her father then gives his daughter, Samson's wife, to the best man, which was another Philistine there. So now in chapter 15, we read that Samson returns to go and get his bride. This was not something that Samson was looking at doing as a long-term or permanent thing. He's upset, he's angry, he leaves them, and now he's intending to go back. And there's some key words here for us, beginning of chapter 15, after a while, and then in the time of wheat harvest. In other words, Samson has been gone for his wife for several months now. The time of wheat harvest would have been around May or June. And if the wedding took place around the time of the grape harvest, which was in the fall, which it seems like he's walking through the harvest of the grapes and such when he comes to Timnah, then he's been away from them for about 6 to 8 months. So a significant time has kind of passed, 6 to 8 months or so, we could reckon from what we see here. But Samson's come around, he's realizing how much he misses his bride. And so he comes ready to win her back and then to consummate the marriage, which hasn't been consummated yet. He comes ready with gift in hand, better than a bouquet of roses or a box of Lindt chocolate. He comes with a young goat. That's what every woman dreams of, I think, right? Right? There you go. All right. Goats for Christmas. Here it comes. Every woman's wish. But his desire, again, is to come into her room, consummate the marriage, fulfilling the marital vows. Now, Samson's father-in-law, his bride's wife, is really in disbelief at Samson's return and at his request at this time. Samson left in such a huff that he thought, oh man, this is the last we're going to see of Samson. Can't have my daughter just remaining. They haven't consummated the marriage. Well, I'm going to have her go and be with another then. And seeing his folliness, his father tries appealing to Samson now by offering the younger sister. He even adds that she's better than the one that Samson married, to which the older sister says, thanks for nothing, Pops. It's real kind of you. Better? What are you talking about here? Well, Samson's pretty irate with all this. Samson's a man of passion that we are coming to know. But he's a man whose passions often get the better of him. It's an unbridled passion which will easily get you into trouble if left unchecked. And we're going to see that happening over and over again in Samson's life. So Samson is already looking at how he's going to get even with these guys. He even feels justified now in whatever he's going to unleash upon them. He says, "This time I shall be blameless." Now that statement shows that he really didn't feel too justified in his previous treatment of the Philistines, which again in 14 verse 19, when he went and killed 30 of their men and took their apparel and gave the change of clothing to those that had solved the riddle. So he went and did that, but now he's saying, this time, man, I'm going to be blameless for what I unleash against the Philistines. Look at verse 4. It says, "Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches, turned the fox's tail to tail, and he put a torch between each pair of tails. And when he set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves." So Samson came up with a very interesting and strategic way to get back at the Philistines. Now, again, remember, at the beginning of the chapter, we saw that it was at the time of wheat harvest. So, their grain is ready to be gathered. Some of it's already gathered and bundled. Some of it's still standing. But this is like grain that's like there. It's ready to ignite. It's ready to catch a fire, right? And so Samson goes and he gathers 300 foxes, it says. Now, catching 300 of anything, I think to me would be quite a feat. 300 of anything, that's like going to be like quite a chore, let alone 300 foxes. That would be extremely difficult. Now, the Hebrew word for foxes could also be used for jackals. Many believe that this is what's actually happened because foxes are a solitary animal and very hard to catch. Jackals run in groups, right? And so they're a bit more easier to catch. They run in packs. So whatever it is, most likely it's jackals. Regardless, it's still a pretty significant feat that Samson is doing. He catches these guys and he ties their tails together in pairs. And he ties a torch between each pair of tails. And so now he's got like 150 mobile torches just going out like a little, Roomba going out among all the fields of grain, standing grain, just burning everything on fire now. It's pretty incredible that Samson thinks this way and he does this. So now fire's just being ignited very quickly. And again, this would have absolutely devastated the economy of the Philistines. This is time. Wheat harvest, this is the time they're going to gather all their grain. This would have been profitable for them. It could have been used to sell. This is a big part of their economy. Plus, the vineyards and olive groves were also decimated. So, so much is wiped out now. 150 had these just torches going, and these jackals one's going to want to run that way, one's going to, are they going to zigzag? They're just covering all this ground, 150 of them with these torches just going all over the place. Everything's just catching fire. Now, what's interesting is that the Philistines worshiped a god Dagon, which we'll see later on at the end of chapter 16. He was known to be, he was a fish-like god, but he was known also, many different kinds of things that Dagon sort of represented, but one was that he was the god of grain, among other things. So again, this would have been now a huge embarrassment for the Philistines to see this god they worship, the god of grain. They got all these grain, some of it being already harvested, and yet all catching fire and being burned. Now they're going, oh my goodness, Dagon, what have you done? They're all literally going, Dagon it, like what has happened to us here? Are God supposed to help us here at this point? Not being much good for us. Huge embarrassment to them. Verse 6, then the Philistines said, who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he's taken his wife and given her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Now, we see here the brutality and the damage that comes from sin. Samson may have felt justified in doing what he did, but it didn't mean he had to do it. Right? He's been a man driven by the flesh. He's driven by pride, acting out of self-interest. And the fallout is one that is a very tragic one. Nothing is getting better. He's doing this because of what's happened to his wife. And now his wife suffers a very serious tragedy because of Samson's actions that he thought he was justified in doing. And it's sad because this is the very threat that the Philistines had given to Samson's wife when they said, tell us what the answer to this riddle is, or else we're going to burn you with fire. Chapter 14, verse 15. And so Samson's wife was pleading with Samson to tell her what the answer to the riddle was, by which she told the Philistines. And yet here now she suffers the fate that she thought she was being protected from. All this is just creating more fire for Samson to further act against the Philistines. Again, this passion that is driving Samson is a fire that needs to be tamed and ultimately snuffed out, but this just continues to increase. Verse 7, Samson said to them, since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that I will cease. So he attacked them hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Then he went down and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Etam. So Samson evidently loved this woman he married. He seeks now to avenge her death. He's not just walking away going, okay, well, there's, other women around. Samson was quite a womanizer, as we'll see as we move along. But it seemed that he truly cared for this woman, and he's upset here, and he's avenging her death. After which he says, once I've done that, I will cease. Naively, Samson thought, one more attack and defeat's probably just going to end it all. Then I can kind of be at peace. But all it did was fuel the fire for retaliation after retaliation, for conflict after conflict. We often stir up more strife when we think we can bring an end to something through force, don't we? We often stir up more strife when we think just one more act to get back will calm everything down. Never is the case. That's why the Bible's so clear on this sort of action. Let's see here. I got some verses. 1 Peter 3, verse 9. It says, not returning evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you are called to this, that you may inherit a blessing. Proverbs 10:12, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all sins. Romans 12:19, beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I'll repay, says the Lord. Those are wise words. Do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. Don't let it fuel the fire, your own personal wrath or vendetta against another. Give it over to the Lord. Because when you try to take matters in your own hands, you're only going to make matters worse. And yet Samson went after them quite hard. To say he attacked them hip and thigh doesn't mean he just went after their hip and their thigh. That's the way that I would probably attack that just naturally. Just a straight punch, I'm just hitting somebody's thigh or hip or something like that. That's not the idea here. It means that he's gone after them with a great fervor and might against them. He went ballistic on them. In other words, he did not give place to wrath. He let that fire continue to burn in him, by which he acted out on it. And after this attack, Samson went and dwelt in the cleft of the rock of Edom. I think we've got some, no, we don't have any. Rock of Edom is right over. So you see the whole Philistine territory is over on the sea coast there. And then up to Timnah, which is where he met his wife, where they got married. And now he's running over to the rock of Etam and taking refuge there. And then look at verse 9 with me. Now the Philistines went up, encamped in Judah, and deployed themselves against Lehi. And the men of Judah said, why have you come up against us? So they answered, we've come up to arrest Samson and do to him as he has done to us. Then 3,000 men of Judah went down to the cleft of the rock of Etam and said to Samson, do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What is this you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. Now the Philistines, they're moving into Judah's territory with one purpose in mind. They want Samson, plain and simple. They're coming after Samson. It doesn't seem like they're concerned about wiping out Israel or anybody else, but Samson, he's the number one enemy right now in the mind of the Philistines. So 3,000 Judahites go to Samson. They question him. And they come with a sad statement. Notice what they said there. Do you not know that the Philistines rule over us? What a sad, pathetic statement at the hand of these Israelites, these Judahites. This is not the way it's supposed to be. It's as though they just kind of rolled over and accepted their fate. God is to be the one that is to rule over them. And when they walk in obedience to the Lord, when they stop falling prey to their own sin, which causes them, that crazy psycho we see in Judges, to become subservient to their sin, slaves to sin, oppressed by an enemy that God raises up because of their sin, if they just followed in obedience to the Lord, they would be experiencing the blessing of God, Him ruling over them. But now it's as though they've accepted this. Samson, what are you doing? Don't you know what's going on? We're under the thumb of the Philistines. They're ruling over us. Don't rock the boat here, Samson. Don't mess things up. Things are kind of like, okay, we're sort of at peace with this. But it's not the way they should have been responding. They're not putting up any resistance against the enemy. And Samson's reply to them is that he's simply doing to the Philistines what they did to him. Yet the Philistines are saying, hey, they're just doing to him as he has done to them. They're both kind of saying, no, he started it first. He started it. It's like little children, immaturity. They're just like going, we're just trying to get back at him. He started it. And they're just going back and forth on this. You see the endless cycle you get into and being driven by vengeance. It just breeds more violence. That's what's playing out here for us. Verse 12, but they said to him, we have come down to arrest you that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines. This is the Judahites talking. This is Samson's own people, fellow Jews. Hey, Samson, we come down to arrest you so we may deliver you to the hand of the Philistines. And then Samson said to them, swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves. Verse 13, so they spoke to him saying, no, but we will tie you securely and deliver you into their hand, but we will surely not kill you. What do they think is going to happen to Samson? We're just going to tie you up. We're just going to hand you over to our enemy, the Philistines, who are so ticked off with you, but we're not going to kill you. They're obviously handing him over to a fate of death at the hand of the Philistines, and yet they're kind of trying to appease their own conscience, go, oh no, we're not going to harm you, Samson. Yet that's exactly what they're doing. And so look at the end of verse 13. They bound him with 2 new ropes and brought him up from the rock. Sadly, the Judahites have become just a shell of the tribe they once were militarily and confidently. They're a tribe that's usually been the first going forth into battle. Now they're bowing to the enemy, the Philistines. Instead of seeing the might that Samson can provide in defeating their enemy, the Judahites are now siding with their enemy in capturing Samson and delivering him to them. Ironically, they're delivering the one who is to be their deliverer. How sad is that? The Judahites have become complacent in their spiritual walk and are compromising freedom for slavery. Inrig says this. It's a sad fact of Christian experience that if you are a Christian committed to growing and maturing in Jesus Christ, you'll often be hindered the most by other Christians who have become accustomed and accommodated to an anemic, wishy-washy spiritual life. It's been said that the church is the only place where they shoot their own wounded, meaning we often fail to show grace to one another and end up opposing each other rather than targeting our common enemy. We are not the enemy. And yet, how often do we prop up each other as the problem, the issue, the enemy? We have a common enemy. It's not us, it's the devil. Those from Judah certainly were failing to see the strength that comes from standing together in support of each other. They would rather support their enemy than support God's deliverer. And how often do we assist the enemy by opposing each other needlessly? It's suspicious that Judah could not rally an army to challenge the Philistines, but they certainly did rally a pretty significant army to extradite one of their own. 3,000 of them, who could have done damage, pushed back the enemy, the Philistines, and yet they use all their force to just take out one of their own. What a sad picture we see happening in Israel. It's no doubt they are in the condition that they're in. Now Samson, let's hand it to him. He's willing to go along with their plan of being delivered over to the Philistines, as long as they didn't kill him. Perhaps he's being led of the Lord here because it's a ridiculous plan. But maybe he's going, okay, well, I'm going to trust the Lord in this. The Judahites have to know full well that by delivering him to the Philistines, bound and secured, is going to most likely result in Samson's death. But the Lord is indeed in all this, because this will be the means to carry out his work. Look at what we see in verse 14. And so when he came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting against him. That was, again, kind of a real rallying cry of warfare to just instill that kind of fear into their opposition. But notice then the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon Samson, and the ropes that were on his arms became like flax that is burned with fire, and his bonds broke loose from his hands. And he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, reached out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Here again we see the key to Samson's strength. It's the Spirit of the Lord. It doesn't say that Samson mustered up might and just tore those bonds apart or tore those ropes apart. It says, no, they became just like flax that's burned with fire. It's the work of the Lord here. And when did that work of the Lord come? When did the Spirit fall heavily upon Samson? When Samson surrendered himself. When Samson willingly gave himself over. You know, it's the same for us, I believe. The more that we are surrendered to the Lord, the more we'll experience his might and his strength at work in us. The more that we're getting ourselves out of the way, the more that the Lord can have his way. And the more that we are emptying ourselves of self, the more that we can have the Spirit filling and occupying every bit of self. Samson surrenders, and it's here that the Spirit of the Lord comes mightily upon him and uses him in a great way. Again, there's nothing with Samson that he should be confident in himself. So too, there's nothing in ourselves to boast in. We can do nothing apart from Christ. How we need to remember that he is our strength. Sin is not mastered by trying harder or seeking reforms or just mustering up more strength. It's overcome by the Spirit filling you and strengthening you. Oh, how we need to be surrendered to the work of the Lord and to the filling of his Spirit in our lives. Now, as the Philistines come, and again, these are people that have advanced weaponry. All right, they're skilled in iron and metal work, and so they got advanced weaponry. And yet, what does Samson do? He just grabs a fresh jawbone of a donkey, recently killed. Again, he's defiling himself with his Nazirite vow. We'll talk about that in a bit here, but he grabs just the denture, the jawbone of a donkey, and he begins to just wield this thing with great might as the Lord uses him. And with it, he slays 1,000 Philistines. Now, we're not sure if that's all that were coming against Samson, or if there's more that fled. How did Samson kill 1,000, just the jawbone of a donkey? Some wonder, were they in tight spaces that he was able to deal with just a few at a time and kind of go through the line? Did some run away when they saw Samson? If it's just 1,000, it makes it all the more sad that there's 3,000 Judahites that are not willing to stand up against 1,000. But the lesson is a good one for us, because it's this: God will do great things with whatever you have when you surrender to the Lord. We never have to say, "Oh Lord, I don't have much to offer. Lord, you can't really use me. I don't have very much to give. I'm not as gifted as this person. The Lord just says, what's in your hand? And the jawbone of a donkey by which some of us would go, the Lord, this is ridiculous. What's gonna be accomplished through that? Yet when we give it to the Lord and say, God, use this is what I have. Would you use it for your glory and your purposes? God will do great things. He's looking simply to show himself mighty through you when we make ourselves available to him and we offer to him what we have. We saw it with Shamgar with his ox goad in Judges chapter 3, verse 31. David with just a sling and 5 stones takes down a giant. The young lad with just a small little lunch ends up feeding 5,000. What's in your hand? Give it to God and see what he can do with it. Like we read oftentimes, 1 Corinthians 1:27, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things which are mighty. When we make ourselves available thinking, I don't have much, that's when God can do great things because there's nothing for you to boast in. But all we can do is boast in the Lord and what he's able to do. Well, verse 16, then Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. And so it was when he had finished speaking that he threw the jawbone from his hand and called the place Ramath Lehi. So Samson makes another kind of poem here. Samson loved riddles, loved poetry. And there's a play on words being used here in verse 16, as if to say, with the jawbone of an ass, I have assassinated them, or with the jawbone of an ass, I have piled them in a mass. It's that kind of idea. We lose it a bit in our English wording, but the words donkey and heap are actually much the same word in Hebrew, the word hamor. So he's kind of repeating this as a play on words here in this poem that he's giving as a again, remembrance or memorial of what God has accomplished here. So Ramath Lehi simply means jawbone hill. Sadly, Samson is attributing, though, this great victory to himself. Notice the way he says this. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have slain 1,000 men. Well, it seems like a good time for a little slice of humility for Samson. That's coming. Look at verse 18. Then he became very thirsty. So he cried out to the Lord and said, you have given this great deliverance by the hand of your servant, and now shall I die of thirst and fall into the hand of the uncircumcised? So God split the hollow place that is in Lehi, and water came out, and he drank, and his spirit returned, and he revived. Therefore he called his name En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. So in a moment of desperation, Samson is very thirsty after this great military campaign. I mean, he's weary, he's thirsty. He now finally cries out to the Lord. And he does so in great desperation. And it's really the first time we see Samson doing so, crying out to the Lord. It's sad that so many people have to reach that place of desperation in their lives before they turn to the Lord. Samson could have been spared a lot of problems if he had been one that had consistently been calling out to the Lord and seeking the Lord. Well, he does so now, and God in his grace comes and ministers to him, and he provides water for him. En-Hakkore means spring of the caller. It's a good reminder for us that we need to be those that are calling out to the Lord daily. Daily being dependent on the Lord. God, I need you. God, would you help me today? God, would you be my strength today? Daily, we need to be calling out to the Lord. Psalm 145:18 says, the Lord is near to all who call upon him, to all who call upon him in truth. What a great promise that is for us. Well, Samson's now saying the right things. He's saying here, you have given us great deliverance. But he's kind of saying this to kind of question God. Are you going to just let me die now? You done all this work now? Is it just going to be the end of it all? Nevertheless, God provides grace for Samson. He nourishes him. And God used Samson to judge. And again, that idea is to be a deliverer or a savior for Israel. And he caused Samson to be a judge for Israel for the next 20 years, as we see in verse 20. And you may be questioning, why? Why Samson? He's such a complicated guy, prone to compromise and yielded to the flesh so many times. Yet God in his grace chose to work through a man, flawed as he was. And it gives me hope and comfort to know that God isn't holding out for perfection. He's willing to use whoever and whatever or whenever. He's willing to work through people like me and you when we oftentimes feel so unqualified. And yet again, God's just looking for people to be available to him. It's definitely no excuse to compromise with sin and to think, well, okay, I guess I can just do whatever I want and God in his grace is just going to, be okay with it and just do his thing. Because we understand that sin does bring consequences. But God is faithful and he accomplishes what he desires through unconventional means. What's interesting is that we read that though Samson judged Israel for 20 years, doesn't say that Israel had rest for those 20 years, as it did previously when we heard of other judges judging the land for that amount of time that they were the judge and said that they had rest. Here we don't hear of any rest that's happening. It may have been a very tumultuous 2 decades with the Philistines continuing to oppress them. And though God had Samson there, we don't know exactly what Samson was involved in. Well, we do know a few things that Samson was involved in because chapter 16 lays it out for us, and it's not very judge-worthy. Look at verse 1. Now Samson went to Gaza, and he saw a harlot there, and he went into her. And when the Gazites were told, Samson has come here, they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the gate of the city. They were quiet all night, saying, in the morning, when it is daylight, we will kill him. So here Samson comes to Gaza. Now, again, keep in mind, I mentioned this last time. Gaza was one of the chief cities of the Philistine territory that sat along the Mediterranean coast there, which is known today as the Gaza Strip. Now, many people believe, the Palestinians there in the Gaza Strip are just the descendants of the Philistines. Not so. Okay? Again, the Palestinians are not a distinct people group. They're the Arabs that were in the land, and the name Palestine was given by a Roman emperor at the time when he had the Jews all sent out of Israel. And he renamed the place Israel to Palestine in reference to Israel's perennial enemy, the Philistines. But the Philistines were not people of that land or area. They are seafaring people. They came from Greece, and they came on, and there are no Philistines today. They've been wiped off the pages of history. There are no descendants of Philistines today. The Palestinians are not that, though they are a people that are in the Gaza Strip today. So let's just make that clear for us here. But here's Samson going down to Gaza, which is one of the chief cities of the Philistines, and he's going into enemy territory. He's going where he has no business being. And it's true for us. There are some places that we as Christians just have no business being, because we're only bringing unnecessary trouble on ourselves by entering into the enemy's ground. Samson is public enemy number 1. So you have to go, Samson, what are you thinking? Going deep into Philistine territory. Well, it seems he's only looking to gratify the desires of the flesh. And when that is what's driving us, we're never going to make wise decisions. Once there, Samson sees a harlot, a prostitute. He goes in, spends the night with her, has a relationship with her. And once again, so much of his life here just simply being driven for the pursuit of the gratification of the flesh. It's not God's design. It's not God's calling for Samson. Certainly not as a Nazirite, but you can say not even as an Israelite, as a people that are to be distinct and set apart for God. Not to be intermarrying with their pagan neighbors. Samson is just going far over the line. He's not just walking up to the line seeing what can he get away with. He's just gone far, far over the line that he shouldn't cross. Now, when the Philistines catch wind that Samson's there, They're plotting to capture him in the morning when he tries to leave the city. So they're hanging out by the gates of the city. Again, cities were walled. They had the main gate that they'd come in through and exit the city out of. They'd conduct business. The elders of the city would be there, and they would, handle judicial matters there in the gate. So the people, now they're hanging outside the gate. They're there waiting for Samson to come out in the morning, to which they're going to capture him. Gates are locked, and they think Samson's trapped. He's not going to be able to get out of here without us knowing. Well, look at verse 3. Samson lay low till midnight. Then he arose at midnight, took hold of the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 gateposts, and he pulled them up, bar and all. He put them on his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Samson heads out at midnight, and no locked doors or gates are going to stop him from moving out. Here he just rips these gates out of the ground. Graciously again, being empowered by the Spirit. And he takes him up to the top of the hill. God is amazing. He's still working through Samson to carry out his purposes despite the flaws of Samson. And then, verse 4. Afterward it happened that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Here we are introduced now to one of the more famous women in the Bible. And again, famous for all the wrong reasons, right? There's not a lot written about her, but her story stands out for the kind of woman she was and the kind of man Samson was. These two were made for each other. Though we don't read specifically that Delilah was a Philistine, it's widely agreed that she was a Philistine. And once again, Samson just seemed to have an eye for Philistine women that he should have been avoiding altogether. Yet he just keeps perpetuating the same mistake that keeps getting himself into trouble. Now, Samson falls in love with her in the valley of Sorek. Sorek means choice vines. Choice vines. So he's in the valley of choice vines. Once again, a place that Samson should not be. He's once again enticed by the flesh and falls for a woman he should be staying away from. Remember, Samson was a Nazirite. And according to Numbers 6, 1-8, the Nazirite vow was this, that they were to shave their head and let the hair grow during the time of this vow. For some, that vow was determined by the person making the vow. It could have been 6 months, a year. Samson was to be a Nazirite for life. So his hair is getting very long. But they were to drink no wine or eat of any fruit of the vine, no grape juice or raisins. Don't even enter into a vineyard. And yet, here's Samson going to the valley of choice vines. Not smart. And they were not permitted to go near a dead body. They were to be, I can't read that, they were to be holy to the Lord. So Samson is broken to these vows that he was to make. He's been by dead bodies, all right? Carcasses of animals. He's slain Philistines. He's defiled himself by dead bodies. He's been in the vineyards time and time again. The only thing holding out right now is his hair. But he's making these poor choices. He continues to flirt with temptation. Now, as Samson continues to be driven by the lust of the flesh, he's losing any kind of good judgment. Not that there really was any to begin with in Samson's life, but that's the problem with the person that's being led by the flesh. Decisions are made that are not wise, and the consequences of those actions are often ignored. We're going to see that developing more and more as we work through this chapter here. Now, Delilah's name, Delilah means delicate or feeble. It's a fitting reminder of Samson's life and the nation of Israel as a whole, because they've walked away from obediently following God and they've been left in a feeble state. They're not as strong as they could be. Such is the case when we choose our desires over God's. When we choose our way over God's way, we're going to find ourselves being weakened, being feeble, being very delicate to or prone to the enemy's tactics. Samson is walking right into these things. Verse 5 there of chapter 16. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her and said to her, entice him and find out where his great strength lies and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to afflict him, and every one of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So here's really, we're seeing Delilah's heart here now for Samson. She was more interested in silver than she was in Samson. She wanted riches rather than a relationship. Now, 1,100 pieces of silver is 1,100 shekels. Now, there's a huge discrepancy over what people believe that amounts to today. But in Judges 17, verse 10, we read that 10 shekels of silver seemed enough to provide an annual income. And since Delilah received this from each of the lords, probably referencing the lords of each of the 5 chief cities of Philistines, so most likely there's 5 of them, it's believed that she's being offered 5,500 shekels of silver. That's a very significant amount. Again, the range of price that has been estimated as today, I mean, I've heard everything from, $50,000 to millions of dollars. So there's a huge discrepancy. Either way, it's a lot of money that she's being offered here. And you know the song, Can't Buy Me Love, but apparently Delilah can buy herself out of love. This is a significant amount. But is it really worth the trouble of sabotaging your relationship, of throwing your husband under the bus just for personal gain? Now, remember, this is important. These Philistines, they're coming to Delilah, hey, we want to find out the secret of Samson's strength. In other words, they couldn't tell. Now, we all picture Samson as being this great, like the Rock, right? This guy's got muscles upon muscles that are just bulging out. Everybody just sees Samson walking on the street. They're like, whoa, get out of the way, man. This guy is fierce. We all picture Samson this way as just being this He-Man type guy. And yet, they don't know what the key is to his strength. If he's got muscles upon muscles, they're all going to go, well, we know, secret of strength, look at the guy. He's built like a building. Like there's just, this guy is strong. We get it. But they don't know. I think Samson didn't resemble the Rock. He probably resembled a lot more like me. Very average or sub-average kind of a guy. I believe that very firmly here. But the secret to his strength, again, was the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. His strength was in the Lord. So look at verse 6. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies, and with what you may be bound to afflict you. Now this is so ridiculous. She repeats exactly what the Philistines are asking. Hey, go and find out what we can bind him with and how we can afflict him. I mean, she's silly enough to kind of use that same word, right? Like, hey, I'm just curious, Samson. How can I afflict you? Like, what kind of a question coming from your wife, right? It sounds a little suspicious. But it's even funnier that Samson doesn't really question her on this. He's not stopping the conversation, asking him, why are you interested in wanting to afflict me? This isn't sounding too comforting here. That's where I'd be going. I'd be questioning her on this. Why do you want to know this? But Samson instead deceives her. He tells her a lie. Again, these two are made for each other. There's just complete deception that they're, again, working in at each other. Verse 7, and Samson said to her, okay, if they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings and not yet dried, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. So the lords of the Philistines brought up to her 7 fresh bowstrings, not yet dried, and she bound him with them. Now men were lying in wait, staying with her in the room. And she said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. Samson, run. Be careful, the Philistines are here. Like she's trying to play this up, right? But he broke the bowstrings as a strand of yarn breaks when it touches fire. So the secret of his strength was not known. Again, no problem for Samson to break free. His strength is still a mystery to everyone. So verse 10, Delilah said to Samson, look, you've mocked me and told me lies. Now please tell me what you may be bound with. I'm just curious. What will it take to bind you and stop you? and oppress you and afflict you? I just am curious. I don't know why. Just something that I thought would be interesting to know. If they bind me secret or securely with new ropes that have never been used, then I shall become weak and be like any other man. Samson's already tested this out, because the Judahites bound him with new ropes by which Samson, remember, they just fell off him like flax burned with fire. It's another blatant lie, and the deception is just going both ways here. Well, verse 12. Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with them and said to him, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. Oh my, they're at it again. And men were lying in wait, staying in the room, but he broke them off his arms like a thread. And Delilah said to Samson, until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me what you may be bound with. And he said to her, okay, if you weave the 7 locks of my head into the web of the loom. So she wove it tightly with the batten of the loom and said to him, oh, the Philistines are upon you again, Samson. I don't know how this keeps happening. They just seem to be right there. I don't know how this is happening. But this time he woke from his sleep and pulled out the batten and the web from the loom. Now notice how Samson's getting closer and closer to the secret of his strength. He's letting her know, okay, there's something to do with the hair here. His hair, again, is that last thing that's upholding the Nazirite vow of being separated unto the Lord. If you just take my hair, out of this great man bun that I've got after years and years of not cutting this hair, take some of that, tie it to, the web of the loom. Oh man, that's going to do me in. See that? He just ripped that up. And the same terminology is used, like how he just ripped up the gates of the city there of Gaza. Ripped it up. No problem for Samson. But notice here, Delilah just starts to turn it up here. Verse 15, then she said to him, how can you say, I love you, when your heart is not with me, Samson? How could you be so ruthless and mean to me? You've mocked me these 3 times and have not told me where your great strength lies. And it came to pass when she pestered him daily with her words and pressed him so that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart and said to her, all right, no razor has ever come upon my head, for I've been a Nazirite to God from my mother's womb. If I'm shaven, then my strength will leave me, and I shall become weak and be like any other man. So Delilah here is just breaking out the heavy artillery. How can you say you love me? You've clearly been lying to me. Don't you care about me? I can just imagine the tears, the waterworks are forming. She's just putting the manipulation machine into high gear here at this point. And she didn't let up. She's pestering him every single day so that his soul was vexed to death. Samson is just fighting a losing battle. Not because she was so strong, but because he was so weak. Really quite ironic. A man known for such strength, yet couldn't hold up against a nagging wife. This doesn't give any justification for wives to say, okay, this is what I need to do to get my husband to respond. That's never the case. Husbands, we need to lead our wives, no doubt. We need to be loving. We need to be kind. Don't use this as any kind of, this is giving me some good ideas here. Now, to be vexed to death meant that Samson just lost all patience. It was like he was just sick and tired of all that is going on. He's just like, that's it. I'm tapping. I can't deal with this any longer. I can tell you what you want to know as long as you just shut up. Is kind of what he's saying here. Again, this is not marital advice here in any way. Now, the crazy thing is that Samson is entertaining this at all. The fact that he's entertaining this. Like 4 times, Delilah's wife is coming to him. And he said, the Philistines come in 3 times. Oh, here we are. And Delilah, oh, what a surprise. Where did you come from? And he's had this act play out 3 times upon him, by which every time he just like breaks free, right? It's like no big deal. Clearly he has seen the whole attempt of sabotage against him. Does he think this is all the game? He loved riddles. Maybe he was being entertained by this. Little does he realize he's playing a game of Russian roulette. And was Samson just a little too overconfident with his own strength and his own ability, believing that nothing could take him down? It kind of seems to be that way. Because regardless of how we view all this, it's evident that Samson's passions and sin has really erased all common sense. That's the inevitable outcome to those who allow the flesh to get out of control. Samson finally confesses, he puts it all on the chopping block here. His hair, again, has been the last of the remaining vows to this Nazirite vow. But keep in mind, guys, please understand this, his hair is not his strength. There's nothing magical about his hair. We're not talking about Rapunzel here. This is not the same story, okay? A lot of men who've grown the hair long thinking, ooh, this could really be effective for me. There's no magic to his hair. His hair was simply the symbol of a vow of consecration to the Lord. And to cut his hair meant that he was cutting off or breaking his vow of consecration. And this is where our strength lies. It's in being set apart for the Lord. Set apart to the Lord and from the world. It's where our strength lies. Samson seems to be deceived to think that even if his hair is cut, he still has strength within himself. He's gonna just run roughshod over the Philistines again. Nothing's gonna stop him. This could be the mentality he has, but he's gonna be in for a very rude awakening. Look at verse 18. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up once more, for he has told me all his heart. So the lords of the Philistines come up to her and brought the money in their hand. This time Delilah seems to know that he's telling the truth. So she gets the Philistines, who at this point I'm sure are thinking, oh, not again, come on. Right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, well, we'll just try a 4th, I guess. I don't know. And that's kind of what they're doing. Verse 19, then she lulled him to sleep on her knees and called for a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and his strength left him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. So he awoke from his sleep and said, I will go out as before at other times and shake myself free. See his attitude? I'll just go out like I've done before. This is nothing. Philistines, give me your best shot. But notice this. He did not know that the Lord had departed from him. He did not know that the Lord had departed from him. What sad words those are. Now, when it says that Delilah, when Samson had his hair cut, end of verse 19, then she began to torment him. In the Hebrew, it speaks of humiliation. Not that she was humiliating him, mocking him, you baldy, look at you now. It's that Samson is being humbled in this situation. His strength was leaving him at this point is the idea. He's being humbled. And it reminds me of the verse, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12, let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he falls. And how we need to continue to walk in that place of humility, recognizing, Lord, it's only through you by which I can stand. It's only through you by which I can resist the enemy, by which I can walk in victory. These things don't come from me. These things don't come by my might or ability. It's by you. Let me never get confident in myself, Lord. But let him who thinks he stands take heed, lest he fall. Samson is heading for a big fall here. And Samson did not even realize that the Lord had departed from him. It kind of reveals the sort of relationship he had with the Lord. Never was he seeing the Lord as his strength, his might. Gets up and he's ready to move ahead and doesn't even realize what's going on. And for Samson, there's going to come a time of chastening, and yet it'll be followed by grace. God is so patient with us. Understand that. He's a God of grace, but yet he can't tolerate the steady decline of morality forever. Eventually it reaches a point where God says, enough is enough. I can no longer continue to show grace. I need to bring that kind of chastening judgment against you. But again, his chastening is really playing out of his grace. His desires to draw us back to him through it. And like I said, Samson's going to go through a time of chastening, but yet will be followed by more grace. Look at verse 21. Then the Philistines took him and put out his eyes and brought him down to Gaza. They bound him with bronze fetters, and he became a grinder in the prison. It's a tragic outcome for Samson here. For so long, he's been serving up whatever his flesh desires. Whatever he fancies with his eyes, he goes after. But understand, sin's only aim is destruction. We can never think that we're going to come out unscathed when we just follow after the flesh. And the very scene that we had before us is a fitting picture of sin in a life that's ruled by the passions of the flesh. Notice what sin does. It'll blind you from seeing what is right. Samson is so led by the lust of the eyes. And now he's lost his sight altogether. Sin blinds us from seeing what is true and what is right. Sin brings judgment. He's bound with bronze fetters. Bronze biblically is a picture of judgment. Here's Samson under that judgment that sin brings. And he became a grinder in the prison. Sin will leave you grinding in circles. Sin is a terrible master. Like has been said, sin will take you further than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. Sin is never something to entertain or think that we can handle or manipulate or use for our own kind of pleasure pursuits, because its end is destruction. And Samson here is a fitting picture of what sin does in a life. But check this out, because God is still not done with Samson yet. It's an amazing story. Verse 22. And we're going to read through just to the end of the chapter here, and we'll make some final comments. Verse 22, however, the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaven. Now the lords of the Philistines gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to rejoice. And they said, our God has delivered into our hands Samson, our enemy. When the people saw him, they praised their God. For they said, our God has delivered into our hands our enemy, the destroyer of our land, and the one who multiplied our dead. So it happened when their hearts were merry that they said, call for Samson that he may perform for us. So they called for Samson from the prison, and he performed for them, and they stationed him between the pillars. Verse 26. Then Samson said to the lad who held him by the hand, let me feel the pillars which support the temple so that I can lean on them. Now the temple was full of men and women. All the lords of the Philistines were there, about 3,000 men and women on the roof watching while Samson performed. Then Samson called to the Lord, saying, O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once, O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And Samson took hold of the 2 middle pillars which supported the temple, and he braced himself against them, one on his right and the other on his left. Verse 30. Then Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he pushed with all his might, and the temple fell on the lords and all the people who were in it. So the dead that he killed at his death were more than he had killed in his life. And his brothers and all his father's household came down and took him and brought him up and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father Manoah. And he judged Israel 20 years. So here we see the end of Samson's life. We see his last words recorded. Last words spoken by many people have been memorialized throughout history. Some of the lesser known last words, I'll hold it and you light the fuse. Other famous last words, no, really, these are the good kind of mushrooms. The last words of many prominent Christians were written down for history. At his death, John Wesley said, the best of all is God is with us. Catherine Booth, the wife of the general of the Salvation Army, said, the waters are rising, but so am I. I'm not going under, but over. Do not be concerned about dying. Go on living well. The dying will be right. Over the centuries, for many martyrs, their sweetest times with their Lord were just before their deaths, even when all others had forsaken them, because the Lord was still with them. And by contrast, Samson's last words were, O Lord God, remember me, I pray. Strengthen me, I pray, just this once, O God, that I may with one blow take vengeance on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then in verse 30, let me die with the Philistines. These words do not exactly express the most noble sentiment one may hear, as famous last words go, but then Samson himself was not all that impressive. Nevertheless, Samson, who's never seen to be one to worship the Lord or offer sacrifice to the Lord, in the last moment of his life, lays down his life to fulfill what God has called him to do. Samson lived a life that should be a good lesson for us. His life was a life of wasted potential. He could have been one of the greatest of the Old Testament heroes, yet he squandered so much away to satisfy his own desires. Yet, it's amazing to see how God still chose to use a man like Samson and used him mightily in the last moments of his life. Why? Because God is a God of second chances, third chances, 100 chances. I'm thankful that God doesn't write me off when I blow it. In fact, according to the Nazirite vow, if one defiled themselves, they could shave their head, bring a sacrifice to the Lord, and be reconsecrated. And they'd have a fresh start. It says in Numbers 6:12, he shall consecrate to the Lord the days of his separation and bring a male lamb in its first year as a trespass offering, but the former days shall be lost because the separation was defiled. You know, it's the same for us when we come to the Lord in repentance. We have a fresh start. The former days are lost. Our failures are forgotten. And we see Samson recorded in the great Hall of Faith of Hebrews chapter 11. He's recorded there as a man who did great things for God. This is the case when we see things on the other side of the cross. The New Testament continually writes people in a way where the past mistakes remain on the other side of the cross. And through God's grace, they're seen as redeemed people. And Samson is recorded in that great hall of faith. Again, it's not something we look at to go, okay, I can just live my life the way I want and everything works out. No. There's consequences for sin. And many people paid a heavy price because of the consequences of sin. But may we be those that continually call out to the Lord and say, God, my life is yours. Use it as you desire. May my life be a testimony of you, a reflection of you. May I live in obedience to you, to your glory and praise. Here's some lessons that we can, again, just walk away from here tonight from Samson. First of all, be concerned for honoring the Lord in your life. Again, throughout much of Samson's life, there didn't seem to be that kind of devotion to the Lord. It was as though he just kind of did his thing. He wasn't concerned about the testimony he was leaving, going into enemy territory, shacking up with a prostitute. Didn't seem to care what kind of testimony or witness I was leaving. But may that not be the case with us. May we be concerned for honoring the Lord in our life. Secondly, compromise in little things leads to a big fall. We can think, oh, it's just a minor little thing. It's just a small little thing. It's not a big deal. But again, we don't just fall into sin. We walk into it one little step at a time. And so those little compromises that build up, that eventually lead to that big fall. Samson was a life that was marked by compromise. Going where he shouldn't have gone, flirting with temptation. Choosing his way rather than the Lord's way. May we see the danger of compromise and be sure that we're dedicating ourselves to the Lord. Consecrating, separating ourselves to the Lord. Lastly, if you don't die to the desires of your flesh, you will die from the desires of your flesh. Sin's goal is destruction. And we might think, oh, it's really no big deal. I can kind of hold on to that. Nobody really knows. It's not harming anybody. It's just a small little vice that it's not going to really have a big effect in my life. We can oftentimes reason our way through these things. But we're called to crucify the flesh, die to the flesh. And if we allow just a little bit to remain, it will eventually do you in. Understand the harm of sin and seek to crucify the flesh and die to the desires of your flesh. Overcome those things so that they don't overcome you. These are lessons that we learn from the life of Samson. Lots of things that we can take away from him, but it's a fascinating story, and it's recorded here for us to learn and to be examples for us, both positively and negatively. May we learn these truths. Let's stand together. Lord, I come before you here tonight, and I thank you, Lord, for your grace and mercy. It's constantly at work in our lives, and we look at a life like Samson, and we wonder how, God, you called a man like that. Because you knew all that was going to unfold, and yet by your grace, you worked through him, and you sovereignly had your purposes carried out through him. It can be a real mystery to us, but we trust you in these things. But Lord, may we not take for granted the grace of God. May we be those that truly live consecrated to you and set apart to you, desiring to walk in obedience to you because, Lord, we understand your way truly is the best way. Let us never settle for something inferior to what you have for us. Let us never allow our flesh to begin to dictate what we do or dominate how we live. But may we rather crucify the flesh so we might live all the more surrendered to you and alive in the Spirit. Strengthen us, Lord, and empower us, God, by your Spirit, because we need you. So lead us in these things now to your glory and praise. Amen.